Welcome and thank you for joining us today for NetSecOps, aligning networking and security teams to ensure digital transformation. My name is Raleigh Gould and I'll be the moderator for today's event. Our featured speaker is Shamus McGillicuddy, VP of Research covering network management at EMA. Shamus has more than 15 years of experience in the IT industry as an industry analyst and journalist. At EMA, he is the vice president for the network management practice. His research focuses on all aspects of managing enterprise networks. And before I hand things over to Shamus, I wanted today's audience to know that we will be wrapping up today's event by taking your questions. Feel free to log them anytime by using the Q&A functionality. Also, today's event is being recorded and you will receive a follow-up email from EMA that will include the on-demand recording as well as additional information on this new research report. So I hope you will check that email out. And now I'd like to go ahead and turn things over to our featured speaker, Shamus McGillicuddy. Shamus?
Thank you, Raleigh, and thank you everyone for joining us today. Before I go any further, I want to thank the sponsors of this research. This is independent research conducted by me as the Vice President of Research at Enterprise Management Associates, but we rely on sponsorships to fund this research and make it possible for us to collect the data and devote time to analyzing the data and writing the report. So I wanted to thank these 8 companies. Accedian, Live Action, NetScout, Riverbed, you'll possibly recognize as network performance management vendors who are increasingly moving towards supporting security and network security, information security, and NetSecOps collaboration. cPacket offers network packet brokers and also network performance management, and network packet brokers sit at the center of networking and security. Endace, a packet capture solution vendor. Obviously, capturing packets is essential to any sort of investigation of what's happening on a network, whether you're into performance or security. And F5 Networks, an infrastructure vendor, and a network security vendor. They offer, you would recognize them as a load balancer and application delivery controller vendor. It offers a variety of security solutions as well, such as web application firewalls and so forth. And so they sort of straddle the line between NetOps and SecOps. So naturally, all these vendors have an interest in understanding what's happening between networking and security teams. Today's agenda, I will talk briefly about my research goals and the methodology I used. Then I will talk about what kinds of drivers we are seeing that are influencing the increased collaboration between networking teams and security teams, which is the purpose of this whole webinar, to sort of look at what's happening between those two groups. Then you'll look at how these enterprises are making that collaboration happen. We'll look at the role that network data plays in that collaboration. We'll look at network monitoring and network management tools and how they support and enable or maybe inhibit collaboration. And then we'll turn it over to Q&A. So first, research goals and methodology. Over the last few years, our research at EMA has found that network infrastructure and operations teams, which are the people I focus on in my research practice, have increased their collaboration with information security, cybersecurity, SecOps. You've seen some movement in the vendor community where a lot of vendors are trying to serve the needs of both of these groups to facilitate that collaboration, and they are usually responding to customer needs, so that also tips you off that this is happening. So the goals of this research were to understand, why is this collaboration increasing, if it is? What role does network data play? Because one potential driver is the security teams need to move away from just using machine data, logs, things like that, and understanding what's happening with traffic. What network management tools and technologies support NetSecOps collaboration? Are there any roadblocks to these partnerships that we need to be aware of, and have any best practices potentially emerged? So in terms of methodology, we surveyed about 366 technology professionals. From job titles, you can see a quarter of them were IT executives. Nearly half are in middle management roles like manager, supervisor, director, maybe program manager, project manager. And then a little more than a quarter were subject matter experts like engineers, architects, admins. In terms of what group they sit in within a technology organization, about a quarter of them were in what they described as an IT executive suite. 1 in 5 were from a network engineering or administration group. Information security, cybersecurity, SecOps was nearly 20%. IT architecture, network operations, and data center operations were also rounded out the functional groups we looked at. There's a transatlantic view of things, North America versus Europe. The Europeans were all generally from the UK, France, and Germany. Company size, we looked at enterprises only, so we have a good mix of mid-sized to very large. And then there were more than 16 industries represented. Almost a quarter were IT services companies, MSPs, but we also had strong representation from the retail, wholesale, distribution market, manufacturing, finance and insurance, construction, healthcare, and software. So drivers of collaboration. Overall, 75% of the organizations that we captured in this survey. Oh, also I should also mention in the methodology, I interviewed quite a few people one-on-one after I completed, or while I was collecting data for the survey. I had a lot of anonymized interviews with subject matter experts about their experience with the process of collaborating with security. Most of them were networking people. There were some security people. And so you'll see them quoted throughout this presentation. Anyway, so 75% of the organizations we captured in our market research survey said that they had observed an increase in collaboration between the two groups, the networking group versus the security group. Only less than 8% reported like an actual decrease. And then we also asked them, where do you think it's important for you to collaborate when these two groups are working together? Technology implementation was very important, and also infrastructure planning and design. So it tells you it's a lot of architecture and engineering groups coming together to build more secure solutions. Also, at the top of the list, technology evaluation and procurement. So a lot of them are coming together before they even start planning things. They want to perhaps even buy stuff together as they're getting ready to implement the solution. Less important, operational monitoring, change management, troubleshooting, or incident response. Quite a few are doing those as well, but it looks like they want to get things right in the design build stage, and then operations is a secondary priority to them. So what's driving this collaboration? This director of network engineering operations at a $7 billion healthcare enterprise said he's kind of captured what I hear from a lot of people, which is he believes that everyone is responsible for security. It's not just the security team's job to do security. If you're in the networking industry, you know this. Like, network engineers, as he says, need to develop security-oriented solutions. Like, when they're building a network, they don't just think about access. They don't just think about performance, high availability, resilience. They also have to think about it in terms of security. So it's already part of their domain. But when it comes to security, who knows the most about security? It's the security group. So it's a natural partnership in a lot of ways, but in other ways, there's a lot of conflict that prevents it from happening. Some of that is institutional, some of it's cultural. We'll go over it later. But anyway, the drivers of why they're doing this, like what are the initiatives? We asked them, is this, if we give them a list of all these initiatives, we said, yes or no, is this initiative driving interest in activity around collaboration between networking and security? And you see more than 8 out of 10 said yes, public cloud adoption and migration, working from home or working from anywhere, data center modernization, all big ones. Almost equally as big, IoT, Internet of Things, industrial Internet of Things, edge computing, very disruptive, can open up a lot of vulnerabilities. So clearly they turn into security group to help them there as a networking team. DevOps, trying to align both networking and security to the DevOps group that's leading the charge into like continuous integration and continuous design. And in cloud first and so forth, trying to impose more rigor around architecture from a network and security perspective is driving networking and security together. WAN transformation, SD-WAN and SASE. These are technologies that pull both networking and security solutions together into combined platforms. So naturally, a lot of them are working together because of that, although that's not as huge a driver as the other ones that we saw at the top of this list. And then zero trust security. A lot of times the implementation of zero trust security solutions might fall on the network team, even if the security team is driving a zero trust strategy. So, what's the payoff of actually, responding to this need and making it happen? See this quote from a network security architect at a $2.5 billion software company. He said, "You will get a final product that is more secure, better implemented, and recover from disaster, and can recover from disaster." Resilience, like you get the security team involved in a good way with the network team, your solutions, your networking solutions are going to be more resilient, more available, and more secure. On the left-hand side, benefits of successful NetSecOps partnerships. The two big ones are faster resolution of security issues and reduced security risk. So it's really they're seeing a security payoff here. The network team is saying, okay, I need to work with security to make things more secure. It's their mission, and I need to be a part of it. Secondarily, they see benefits like operational efficiency across the board, faster resolution of user experience or network performance problems, more influence over technology initiatives. You bring these two groups together, they are a united voice in things like cloud and IoT and network resilience. So the first opportunity is to improve overall security posture. Second opportunity is to improve the network itself as its ability to serve the business consistently. Cost savings is an afterthought, which is always the case. When you're looking for best practices, people who tackle something like this to save money are really shooting themselves in the foot because they're going to miss opportunities to invest and spend on improvement. Other less important opportunities are also responsiveness to change and reduced architectural complexity. We also asked them what other groups in your organization benefit when you're working together well as a network and security operation. And you see, these are the top 5 that they selected. IT service management and is the biggest one, but then also IT governance or IT financial management, the people that just like controlling operations from IT business the organization as a business, IT organization as a business benefit. Cloud ops and DevOps, both there, and data center infrastructure and operations. So there is an opportunity to better serve the cloud, the DevOps group, the data center group, when networking and security are working together as one. Making it happen. Sometimes networking and security groups, they look at each other across the dividing line and they think, is that my friend or is that my foe? This network architect, a $15 billion retailer, he says the security team's too esoteric. They ask, why is the application team putting this here instead of there, like in the cloud, when they should do it in the data center? And as a networking architect, he's thinking to himself, that ship sailed already. Like the DevOps team is going to the cloud. We're not here to have a philosophical conversation about whether things should be in the cloud. And he says he comes away from these conversations thinking to himself that the security team doesn't understand what the business is or what it's doing. A retailer is moving its e-commerce operation into the cloud. Get over it, security. Let's talk about how we make it work. Network security architect at a $2.5 billion software company says when the network team is building something and working on a deadline, they see the security team as a roadblock to hitting a milestone, especially if leadership is pushing them to run things tightly. That's a common refrain I've heard from a lot of people, that the networking team is trying to move faster than they have in the past because they are labeled as the slowpokes in a technology and in a digital organization, right? And if the security team is sitting there as a roadblock saying, hey, I know you're trying to make this cloud migration happen or this IoT implementation happen, but let's talk about why we should even be doing it. And the network team's like, dude, I've already got someone cracking the whip every morning. I can't listen to this right now. So I'm getting frustrated just talking about it. 39% of the organizations in the survey said that they felt were currently fully successful with their NetSecOps partnership. Most of the enthusiasm was coming from the IT execs in the survey, 69% of them. So they're like almost twice as likely. You know, they're like, oh, we're doing great, because they're not looking down into the trenches where the engineers and the architects and admins are sitting and saying to themselves, it looks terrible down here. We're just, we're catching bullets left and right. Only 24% of them felt like they were fully successful. What are the challenges that they're dealing with? Number one, data quality authority issues. It's about the data that they use to communicate with each other, to understand each other's worlds. They have issues with quality, they have issues over who owns what, who's got the true source of truth about what's going on the network and in the business. Cross-team skills gaps. They don't know how to talk to each other. They don't know how to use each other's tools. They don't know how to work together if they're building out an architecture together, like they might not really know how, what the other person's priorities are in terms of like, oh, well, this is how the traffic's going to flow. Here's where the security control points are. They might not be able to talk about how those things work in their different worlds. Budget issues, architectural complexity, lack of tools and technologies that enable collaboration. They each have their own set of tools and they don't interface with each other. Those are the big top 5. 92% of CIOs and CISOs, according to our survey, have introduced policies and programs to encourage collaboration between these two groups, but only 36% of those CIOs have been fully successful with those efforts. Director of Global Networks at an $80 billion technology company says he's been added to committees and he has quarterly meetings on those committees where global security comes up and presents, and then network architecture comes up and presents, and they come up with priorities for collaboration based on business priority. Why are those committees there? Because the CIO said do it. He formed the committees. She formed the committees. Some people don't bother to do that. 62% of CIOs have introduced new best practices and processes to impose control, to set a roadmap for how people work together. 57% have reorganized to some extent, maybe partially combined groups, maybe created like a cross-team group that, has like a couple of network engineers and architects. Maybe it's a committee. Budget sharing, so they're trying to pool budgets a little bit. And impression I got from people I talked to was the networking team sees gold in the hills of security. Like the security team's got money to spend, can always get the ear of the budget holders and justify an investment. The network team struggles more, so the network team sees the security team as a good partner for getting money. Training and certifications can help, perhaps, and then shared tools. So network data. The security teams need to analyze traffic. Network traffic drives NetSecOps collaboration in 83% of the enterprises we surveyed. That's what they said. 93% of the respondents to this survey said that their security teams need access to packet metadata. And 92% of them said that their security teams need access to the full packet data. Why? 69% of them are implementing some kind of network detection and response or network traffic analysis tool, and they need good traffic data to feed into it. 58% are just focused on incident response, and they're coming to the network team and saying, I need these packets you captured. I need to tap a switch or a router. Can you do that? 55% are doing real-time packet payload analysis in some way. Maybe DLP, or maybe it's an intrusion detection system or something. They need that data to be fed to their tools. Forensic packet analysis, so they're diving deep into packets. This network architect at a $15 billion retailer said this process of giving these security teams the data they need is painful. The process of sharing sometimes works well, sometimes it doesn't work well, because the security team doesn't have a solid idea of what they're asking for. They'll say, show me data from web servers. And then he has to ask, which web servers? Because we have a lot, as in thousands. And they're in the cloud, and they're also in the data centers. So do you want the ones that are in the data center, or do you want the ones in the cloud? Sometimes it's difficult to communicate with them. I've also heard from network engineers and architects who say the security team doesn't like to share too much information over email. They don't trust email. So like getting them to explain what they need and why is impossible unless you go and you sit face to face with them and like make sure that there's no one listening in. So this data hunger that the security team has, they need the network data. There's this interest in unifying how the two organizations deal with packets and traffic. Network packet brokers. 94% of the organizations we surveyed said that they're using, at least one network packet broker to get packet data to analysis tools, and 90% of them said they believe that those packet brokers are important to facilitating collaboration between network and security. For those who've never heard of a packet broker, it's an appliance that aggregates traffic from multiple mirrored or inline packet flows off of the network, aggregates it, grooms it, filters it, maybe creates some metadata off of it, and then sends and load balances those flows, or specialized flows perhaps, to multiple analysis tools. So that's a nexus point where networking and security can work together. If you give it's probably a network engineering team that owns the packet brokers, but if they give some good like GUI-based access and administrative access to that infrastructure to the security team can sort of point and click their way to making sure they get the right data flows to the tools they need without having to wait on change tickets and things like that, or phone calls, or or face-to-face meetings because they don't want to communicate what they need over email. Consolidation of packet capture infrastructure. 97% of enterprises are consolidating the platforms that the network and security teams use to capture the actual packets to disk. Some of them are only doing it partially. Others are doing it completely. That's their goal, at least. Why might they only do it partially? Perhaps because they have some solutions that have integrated packet capture, packet storage capability. Those are like siloed tools, and they're saying, okay, well, I'm not going to, break this apart. I got this specialized solution that has a certain amount of packet capture capability for its analysis needs, and I'm going to keep it that way. But for other solutions that are pulling packets from a third-party appliance, let's consolidate with networking and get one shared resource for that. Primary drivers: it reduces security and compliance risk associated with collecting data, perhaps, and storing data. And it's also because you're fewer points of failure, fewer points of breach, more control, centralized control, and then fewer data conflicts. You got one source of data instead of 3, 5, 6, 10. Packets are the ultimate source of truth. 56% of network teams said they need 56% of people we surveyed said that their network teams need continuous access to all packets crossing the wire, not just some, but all. And 51% of network teams, that's supposed to be security teams, need the same. Typo there. So both teams, majority of them need it. Moving from data to the actual tools. Siloed IT organizations, vendors have work to do, based on what this network architect at a $100 billion bank said. When you are buying a solution, you aren't thinking about the other team's needs. My criteria is to select a tool that is network-centric, focused on my needs. It's very difficult to have a tool that serves different needs. There are some tools that can offer it, but most of the tools have a particular focus in one direction or another. In other words, you have a network performance management solution that has a lot of security insights. It might deliver a lot of value to you, but you might not be able to assess whether it helps your security team fully. Now, if you bring the security team in at the procurement stage and say, here's what this can do for you, you want to share this with me, there's some opportunity there. Now, I've talked to people who say it's really hard to get the security team to listen about that, saying, hey, look at this performance management tool that can give you security insights. And as soon as you say the word performance management, the security guy is going to tune it out. He's going to be like, why am I even having this conversation? So you gotta work to make sure that the security team can see what the opportunities are and whether or not they want to participate in the procurement, implementation, and use of a tool that might be able to deliver value to both of you. Because he's not going to be able to, one, evaluate your needs, and two, make sure that you actually adopt what he implements. So the partnership needs to start before you even start acquiring a shared tool. So network monitoring analysis, 76% of IT organizations have separate traffic monitoring and analysis tools for NetOps and SecOps. That's not surprising. If anything, it should be higher. 82% of SecOps teams sometimes use the NetOps team's monitoring tools. That might involve like, oh, I just want to see what kind of traffic's hitting the DMZ, or I want to use your infrastructure monitoring tool to see what, can you show me a dashboard that shows me like the health of all the firewalls, so that I know that they're all working and not dropping packets, because I'm concerned that one of them is acting funny, but I have no tools to tell me if that's the case. 80% of enterprises are interested in consolidating onto a shared traffic monitoring tool between networking and security, but they don't know if they can actually successfully do it. Now, that doesn't mean they're going to like retire their respective siloed tools, but they do want some kind of shared tool. But 38% said they're really challenged by the fact that they don't see solutions out there yet that meet the requirements of both teams. 32% said they're not quite sure there's a benefit for sharing tools, and 32% said there's some budget conflicts, like who owns it, who spends the money on it. Those are the top 3 issues that they told us about. Did I skip one? No, I didn't. Okay. DDI management. So DNS, DHCP, and IP address management. That is a core network services management solution, managing and automating IP address management, subnets, DHCP servers, DNS servers. Very specialized area of networking that some security teams know nothing about, but can offer value. Like for instance, IPAM can offer insight into what security domains are out there. What's the network segmentation scheme look like? What IP addresses are associated with what parts of my business? Things like that. 75% of network teams share data from their DDI solutions with the security team. 46% are doing this manually today. So there's some need to automate that through integration. 87% of network teams have integrated or plan to integrate their DDI management tools with the security team's tools. Here's this network architect at a $15 billion retailer. You've heard from him a couple times now. Security doesn't seem to care about DDI, but they do come back to us and say, what's the subnet? Having access to an IPAM solution would save them a lot of time. There's no reason they couldn't access it, but they would have to learn how to use it, or at least get data fed into their own tools. So like when they're doing a query, they'd be like, oh, well, the IPAM system's telling me that these subnets mean this. Okay. DNS, domain name system, sorry, is a potential threat vector. We know, we see DDoS attacks through that layer of traffic. People try to spoof DNS to hijack people away from your websites. Malware can be hidden in DNS traffic. 94% of the security teams, according to the survey, have started trying to analyze DNS traffic. So a lot of times that's going to require collaboration with the network team to get them that DNS traffic. And a lot of them are also trying to actually adopt DNS security. You can learn more about that in the research report that we published yesterday. Network automation. As you see here, about 90% of them say that network automation is at least somewhat important, if not very important, to facilitating collaboration between network and security. We asked them what kinds of automation tools are the most useful. Network change and configuration management was edged out others as number one, just ahead of security policy automation. Those are tools that, automate the management and policies of in firewalls and other security appliances. Infrastructure as code. So they're trying to take the tools that DevOps has introduced in the enterprise and impose automation on networking and security, and that they see as a facilitation opportunity for their own collaboration. And then DDI automation tools are a big one for them as well. Those are the top four. The tasks that these two teams want to automate together. Event management. So that's day two operations. You saw like a lot of the collaboration focus was on, buy, design, implement. But here with automation, they see an opportunity for event management. Also, more engineering focused opportunity like infrastructure provisioning is a big one. Incident response, troubleshooting, we combine those, and infrastructure lifecycle management. So making sure not only is the infrastructure provision configured properly, but that things don't drift over time. Software on switching and routing and firewalls is up to date. Patches are up to date. End of life of a certain device is alerted to you. Things like that. Something that can automate all that can be really useful for these teams when they're trying to work together. So, final thoughts. NetOps and SecOps teams are trying to align. 75% of them have increased their collaboration over the last couple of years. Traffic data and the security teams need to analyze that traffic data is kind of like the center of gravity for a lot of this collaboration. CIOs and CTOs are trying to make this collaboration happen. Not a lot of them have been completely successful so far. CISOs should also be mentioned there. They share some of the blame. And network teams lean on network packet brokers, network capture appliances, network traffic monitoring, DDI management, and network automation in general to enable this collaboration. So as I mentioned just a moment ago, there's a full research report on this. These are just the highlights. It's a 70-page paper, lots more data, lots more of analysis, a lot more quotes from various people in the trenches who shared their experiences with me, as long as I granted them anonymity. And that's available for download behind a paywall in our research library. If you're an email subscriber, you can have it for free. You just go to the library and click download, and it'll go right into your download folder. Nice big PDF file. So with that, I'm going to hand it back over to Raleigh for facilitating the Q&A. Thank you for your time.
Great. Thank you, Shamus. I'm going to go ahead and jump into the questions. The first one is, why would network and security teams want a shared traffic monitoring tool?
So one thing I'll say from the perspective of my research practice, when I every couple of years, I do a benchmarking survey of the network management world, and I ask, what were from a domain perspective, or from a technology perspective, which of the following domains were root causes of your last three complex IT service network performance problems? Like thinking about the last three performance issues that you had that was so complex that it required you to sit down with people from other groups to try to like war room it. What were the root causes of those? And usually network performance was the most common response, but not the majority of the responses. Number 2 and 3 were are usually security related. It's either an incident, like a security incident that presents itself as a performance problem. a DDoS attack or a malware infection that's propagating within your network presents itself as a performance issue, congestion, um, something like that. And you start troubleshooting it as a performance issue, and that's how your tools are oriented. And then at a certain point, either through luck or through skill or through insight from someone else, like the security team, you realize that what is actually happening is an attack. And that is why the network team would benefit from traffic monitoring, network performance management solutions that take into consideration security, that can see like behavioral anomalies that are indicators of malicious activity. If you have that in your network performance management solution, that's traffic monitoring, you can pivot very quickly into type of response you have and the types of people that you bring into a situation. From the security's perspective, they often don't have very good understanding of how traffic, is how the business functions from a traffic perspective. Like applications are the lifeblood of digital enterprises, and everyone's kind of digital these days, especially with COVID and everyone being stuck from home and buying products and services remotely. Um, so, how traffic moves across the business is important to making sure the business is able to function, like how, transactions, commerce, communication, so essential. Security is not really thinking in terms of how traffic represents that. They're thinking in terms of how traffic represents threats and attacks. If they have access to a traffic monitoring solution that can tell them how the business is performing through network performance management, then they can eliminate things. Then they can work more intelligently towards protecting the business rather than inhibiting the business. And that also becomes the facilitation point where network operations and security work together to fulfill both their goals and help each other do that. That's it. I'm done. That's my answer.
Great. Thanks for all that insight, Shamus. The next question is, what are NetOps and SecOps teams doing together in the cloud?
I got the impression from people I talked to that they they are trying to have a unified voice in the cloud, because the cloud is usually a lot of them feel like they have some decent clout there, but they're really not leading things. It's usually the some kind of cloud or DevOps or app dev team, sometimes line of business, that's leading the charge in the cloud. And in a lot of organizations, the infrastructure team's kind of catching up or trying to impose control. Some are doing it better than others. The network team and the security team both recognize the importance of architectural rigor and control, and redundancy, resilience, and they are really interested in translating their best practices that they've learned from data center and on-prem infrastructure into the cloud. And they need to get the people who have the cloud in the cloud to listen. I think as a unified voice, networking and security working together can enable that. They can sort of both review plans for the cloud. They can both make recommendations in the cloud. They can both harangue people working in the cloud and say, listen to us. They can tap budget. They can say, I know you guys don't want to spend money on this old world stuff. You think that everything it can be cloud native, or the only vendors you should be working with are vendors that are born in the cloud. But we work with these traditional infrastructure vendors that have adapted their solutions to the cloud and can make sure that the cloud is enterprise ready. And that's why I think a lot of them, 81% of them, said that the move to the cloud is making them work together. I think actually people I talked to one-on-one also are quoted in the report as talking about why that's important.
Thank you, Shamus. Are these two groups sharing automation tools?
I don't know if they're sharing yet. They see automation tools as facilitating that. I think, for instance, like a lot of them said network change and configuration management tools are really useful. And one of the reasons that's probably useful is because the network team is using it every day for their daily work, but they can also use it to document things for the security team. and also like the security team can say, we'd really love to have more change control around this. And the security team will say that, and the network team will say, well, I can make that happen with this automation tool. And they'll be like, hey, do you want to use this automation tool? And the security team will look at that automation tool and say, I have no idea how to use that, but thanks. The cross-team skills gaps, I think, are going to be a little bit of a barrier there for some of that. Same thing with now the policy automation tools, the security policy automation tools might be a little more of a gap bridger there. Like I think security and networking are probably both sharing tools like that. The tools they use to manage their network security infrastructure. And I think that's probably an area where they're sharing. The infrastructure as code, that's kind of a wild west. I think, people learn how to use things that are being brought into the enterprise from the app DevOps world. Maybe the networking and security teams can learn to share that. I think those tools are going to be shared by a wide range of people in the digital infrastructure team. So there's, I think, some tools and DDI management. So DDI automation, I think there might be some sharing there. I think a lot of people are interested in integrating the network team's DDI solutions into the security solutions that the security team is using. Whether the security team is going to start using DDI automation, I think on a case-by-case basis, I haven't seen that yet. Although this research did show that a lot of security teams are taking ownership of DNS security, but that's not really necessarily an automation tool. That's a security solution.
Thanks, Shamus. The next question is multi-part, so I'll ask you one at a time. The first part of the question is, given network data is the center of gravity, as you put it, is driving collaboration the place to start with for CIOs, CISOs, and CTOs looking to increase and improve collaboration?
So I think what that question is asking is, should people start with network data as a place to bring people together? And that's probably good. Yeah. I would say, based on what I'm hearing, you got to make sure that the network team wants network data, but they might not understand might not understand everything about network data, and they might not understand how to get it and what the scope is of the data that they need. So I think that yes, creating some sort of shared infrastructure for accessing, storing, and supplying network data to analysis tools would be great. But you also need to educate the security team on how to do that properly. They need to understand how they need to have a slightly better understanding of how network data represents the business, and connect some sort of connection between network data and the business. A lot of network operations teams have started looking at network data from a business level. They've stopped abdicating responsibility after a TCP handoff. Now they're like, you know what? I need to look at all the applications that are running on my business and start there, and then look down through my tools at how that corresponds to what's happening with traffic and what interfaces are carrying that traffic. Because as one person told me a couple years ago, I might have 4,000 interfaces down, but I only won't care about the interfaces that need to carry critical business traffic. The rest I can wait till later to deal with. So yeah, I think start with data and make sure that both teams have access to the data, have a shared repository for data as much as possible, so there aren't conflicts over quality and authority of that data, and also making sure that both teams understand what the data is and how they can use it, how they can make queries and things like that.
Great info. Thank you. You answered the following two questions. So thanks for that. That wraps up all the questions that came in. So I'm going to go ahead and conclude today's event. I wanted to thank the audience for taking time out of your schedule to join us. As I mentioned, you will be receiving a follow-up email from EMA with resources from today's webinar and more information about this new research. So I hope you'll check this out. Thanks again for joining us, and I hope we'll see you at a future EMA research webinar.